Coming up on FTC Recap, the team Cobalt Colts, world champions from Houston in 2019, join the show as we discuss the latest headlines. We talk about their engineering design process and documentation, and play for $20 of trivia, where you could get a $20 gift card to any FTC supplier. All this and more coming up on FTC Recap.
Giving you a voice.
Making it loud our own way.
Welcome to the fun.
First Updates Now FTC is produced in partnership with the Orange Alliance. Make TOA your place to go for FTC team stats and event results at theorangealliance.org. And also, viewers like you. We need your help to keep fun loud, live, and independent. Help us by visiting our Patreon to pledge your support at patreon.com/First Updates Now. You can also support fun live on Twitch for a few bucks a month or by linking your Prime account for free and clicking subscribe.
Welcome to FTC Recap, where you get the breakdown and discussion of what's going on in the FTC community. For First Updates Now, I'm Ishan. Joining me is the boss.
We'd like to welcome our guests, Braden and Elizabeth from Team Cobalt Colts 6547. Cobalt Colts was the second pick of the winning alliance at the World Championship and Inspire Award finalist, both in the Rover Ruckus season. Thank you guys for coming on the show. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about your roles on the team and experience in FTC?
Sure. My name's Braden, and I'm a member of 6547 Cobalt Colts, and my role on the team is head engineering notebook editor, and I also work a little bit on programming, and I run our social media accounts also.
My name is Elizabeth, and I run business and PR and outreach portions of our team, as well as the engineering notebook design process.
Oh, fantastic. And how long have you guys been in FTC or robotics in general?
I've been involved in FTC. I'm a senior now. I've been involved with the Cobalt Colts for 4 years now.
This is my 10th year first and my 5th year of FTC.
Wow, 10th
Oh,
year.
wow. Okay.
Beating me out. I think I was at 8 when I graduated, so that's very impressive.
20.
We can't compete. I'm sorry. All right. With that being said, let's jump into our headlines. Team 14825 Assets Robotics recently released a guide on how to stream virtual events live. They have a detailed guide on how to set up OBS and use the minimum equipment to create an awesome live stream. I hope teams use this guide to show off their robots when running virtual events, since First has made it so it's not mandatory to record video of virtual events. Going through this guide, this is so in-depth and such a good start to it could be used not just for virtual events, it could be used for actual competitions. So I hope that areas that are not live streaming their events currently take note of this guide and use it to their advantage. What do you guys think of this?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, obviously there's, teams really have to recalibrate this year with virtual events. We did our scrimmage just last week, and I know it was a little tough figuring out the exact video angles and stuff for our robot, and it definitely wasn't perfect. But, I think teams using this guide will really just improve the video quality of everything in FTC. I know last year we would often see matches at state championships or just league meets where the whole video would be blocked by ref standing in the way or just audience, and this would really solve a lot of those issues.
Awesome. And I put the guide in the chat if you want to take a look at that. I know there are some teams talking about making a reveal and setting up a stream, so definitely take a look at that. For you guys, Braden and Elizabeth, are you guys doing virtual events this year? What's Kansas looking like? That's where you're from, right?
Yes, we're from Kansas. We actually compete in Missouri because there's not enough of a FTC, following in Kansas, so we jump over to Missouri to compete. So far, we have not competed yet, but we will be competing in a virtual league format this year.
Cool. So you guys could definitely use something like this at your virtual events. Boss, want to move on to the next topic?
Yeah, sure. This is a really cool international topic. Team 17517 WOEN, which stands for Workshop of Eternal Nonsense, recently posted a Reddit post of the first version of their robot. The plywood panels on the outside look very sleek, and this shooter is especially eye-catching, featuring a simple design. I think it should work well. And I noticed they put their motors through like 2 different stages of power. Like they have the bevel gear first and then chaining to the wheels. And I think that's a great solution so they can make room for their odometry pods and ensure a slim drivetrain. Right now, Wowen is 3-3 for the season, as they competed in the St. Petersburg Meet 1 in Russia on October 18th. And I also assume they did compete this past weekend in the St. Petersburg Meet 2. So hopefully we'll see some high scores posted soon. Interesting how they're running Tetrix too. I noticed that as well. What do you guys think?
Yeah, one of the cool things, like I usually don't pick robots to show off during this headline portion, but I first thought it was awesome that an international team built something like this. And you'll see it from a lot of international teams. They'll build full custom robots because they have very limited access to things like Tetrix and Rev and GoBuildo, stuff that we take for granted as United States teams. Another thing that I noticed that was really cool, they actually belt their drivetrain motor to their intake. So as they drive forward, their intake activates, and when they drive backwards, their intake ejects. I don't know whether this might have some implications in driving, but I thought that was a kind of cool approach to trying to make your robot smaller, lighter, and more efficient.
Yeah, I know a lot of teams this year, like they're looking to combine, their intakes with their conveyor system, or feeding up to the indexer and shooter. I think this is just taking it one step further, really, and we'll see, how well it works out the rest of the season.
Yeah,
Brayden, Elizabeth, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting design. It's interesting to see how they're trying to get the rings up into the shooting mechanism. That's kind of similar to what our team is thinking about, intaking right off the ground and directly into our shooting mechanism. So that's a really cool design.
Yeah, somebody in the chat said all this, but Tetrix motors, and you just have to think, right? Like a lot of these teams just don't have access to it. So these motors may have been passed down from multiple teams. The fact that First limits the motors that we can use, and all the companies that make those motors are like very heavily United States based, it makes it super difficult for international teams, and so they have to use whatever they can get their hands on. And this just goes to show that you can have a good implementation even without the best motors.
Yeah. Should we go on to our next headline, Nishan?
Yep. So recently there was a new page added to the FTC wiki that documents the FTC Control System. This page covers how to use TensorFlow, a built-in library, a software library, to detect everyday objects and train your own neural networks to detect things with your FTC phone camera. This software was first added in Rover Ruckus to detect the sampling field and can be used to detect the rings in the starter stack this year. If you're using TensorFlow or some other software, it might run a little slower from my experience. I don't know. Are any of you guys using TensorFlow? Have you guys tried it out, especially for this year? I haven't, so.
We haven't tried TensorFlow out for this year. We're actually using our own custom pipeline, but I have heard some talk about TensorFlow from our mentors and things like that. And I think one thing first changed this year is it's a lot, or the zoom feature actually works, so you can detect rings and objects from 5 to 10 feet away. So that might have some implications in teleop, whether you decide to use vision detection there or not.
What about you guys? Have you guys done a lot of vision? I know in Rover Ruckus you were able to hit the sampling field, and TensorFlow was initially released for that sampling field. Do you guys know what you used in the past and what you're planning on using this year?
I don't remember specifically. I'm not heavily involved in programming, but I believe it might have been TensorFlow that we used that season. I think we're using Vuforia also, and I don't remember exactly the systems that our programming team is using, but we're able to scan the rings so far this year, so we're making good progress.
I know we spent a lot of time last year trying to figure out colors and stuff like that with a complicated program.
Awesome. Abbas, want to move on?
Sure. So our next headline for the night is from Team 10100 from Wisconsin. They recently made a calculator for this year's game, Ultimate Goal. It features a versus and remote calculator, so for both physical and virtual competitions, scouting options, and can access team statistics directly from the Orange Alliance. I think it's going to be an incredibly useful tool when physical competitions start back up and during these virtual competitions. Personally, I really like the ability to run offline, as an app, and I can't wait to try the team scouting option. Any thoughts, guys?
Yeah, when I saw this, like, I've seen a ton of scouting apps and scoring apps, and I'm sure it's the same case, like, every year, right? I made one, I think, every year for the past 2 or 3 years. But the thing that really set this apart was it was able to import data from TOA. I have not seen an app do that very efficiently and be able to display it. That way you can compare data that TOA has with your data. Just something I noticed. How do you guys do scouting? I don't know if you guys are the necessary experts, but do you have an idea of how you've been doing that at competitions?
We've tried to do quite a bit of scouting, like growth through the years we've been an FTC team. There was an app that some of us used, but it was only available on Samsung. So we switched to using a Google form, which created kind of a master list in Google Sheets, which we use towards the end in the alliance selection parts.
Cool. I like to see a lot of teams moving over to digital because then that makes the information a lot easier to manipulate and perform stats on.
Yeah. I think one thing with like physical sheets for scouting though is it is a lot easier to draw like auto paths or driving strategy and things like that, and that was something that was really important last year, and I think will be equally important this year.
Yep. So something that our coder did last year was make a custom vision software for Vuforia and non-bot Java. This is what Batboy says in Batboy 2021 says in the chat. And yeah, I know a lot of teams that have done custom vision softwares without using OpenCV or on-bot Java, or OpenCV or Vuforia, and there's a lot of tuning that goes into that, so it's very impressive. But it can be a time sink. So going through and at least prototyping with the existing libraries can be very helpful, and then working your way to making that custom is definitely something really cool to try out. So our last headline for today is Kraken Pinion. They set up a localization algorithm that uses modern robotics sensors to make their robot return to the same position on the field every time. They use these sensors in combination with IMU sensor in order to get a coordinate position and orientation on the field that they can go to. What do you think of this? Like, they're literally able to lift the robot off the ground and it will still return to the same position, something you couldn't do with odometry. I was a little surprised because there are some bugs that you can run into this. Like, if a robot gets in the way, it could mess up the sensors, but I don't know what you guys think.
Is it not also supplemented by odometry? Because I know they have had like they're pretty big into odometry. I thought it was I could be wrong, but I thought it was also supplemented.
I do not believe that this one is supplemented by odometry. This one is just using a bare Traver chassis kit from what I can see right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, in that case, I think I share the same concerns with you, Sean. Like, when we go to physical competitions, how will it react to other robots? Obviously, there's going to be the robot in their alliance, but also robots on the other alliances. I think motions could get pretty close this year when both going in the middle or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Our robot right now is able to, at the end of autonomous, return back to the starting point. I don't remember exactly what software our programmers used to do that, but I saw this video of Kraken Pinion the other day, and that's really impressive how even being able to lift the robot up and put it back on the ground, it's still able to track where it is, so that's really cool.
Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. So that's going to wrap up our headlines. Let's move into our next section. Let's discuss that. All right, for those of you just joining us, our guests on the show tonight are from Team 6547, the Cobalt Colts. They were world champions and Inspire Award finalists at the Houston World Championship in 2019. If you have any questions for them, tag @FirstUpdatesNow in the chat with your question. To start us off, could you tell us a little bit about your team? Where are you from? How did you guys start out? How many members are on your team?
So we're the Cobalt Colts. We have about 11 members. We're mostly all seniors. And, we prioritize not winning, but being gracious professional.
Cool. Awesome. So I know you guys mentioned you're all seniors. Do you guys have any plans for sustainability, or, what's the plan going forward for the team?
With COVID, it kind of messed everything up. We were originally supposed to start a rookie team this year, but we thought that wouldn't be a super good idea with the pandemic.
Right.
So at the end of the year, we're planning on doing a bunch of recruiting, or hopefully throughout this year, and then over the summer, kind of training them with a program. We build Halloween costumes for kids in wheelchairs, and so we're hoping to use that over the summer as an experience to transition them into the engineering world.
Oh, wow.
Really cool.
Yeah. So let's start with the beginning of the season. You guys have obviously built very successful robots each season. And what does the design process look like for your team, right after the game is released? How does the brainstorming process look, and what about even the documentation of all of it?
Yeah, so typically we attend a event with Missouri and Kansas teams to watch the reveal video together. Obviously this year that's not possible, so we watch the ultimate goal reveal from our robotics space. And then after the reveal, we always host a long brainstorming session. So we have a bunch of whiteboards throughout our robotic space, and we kind of break up into groups. So typically we've kind of identified who's kind of good at building intakes, who's good at building like the shooting mechanism specifically for this year, who's good at building like the other mechanisms like this year for like the wobble grabber. So we kind of divide up into groups based on like, what do we think, who do we think will be best at building this specific mechanism? And then each kind of subgroup talks together and basically brainstorms crazy ideas as they can come up with. And then by the end of that brainstorming day, we kind of hope to have a plan going forward of like what are the 3 or 4 prototypes that we want to start building. And then we'll use typically just any parts we have laying around to make our first few prototypes. And then once we kind of decide which designs are the best that we want to move forward with, then we will start actually ordering parts or fabricating specific parts for those designs.
Oh, awesome. And, with documenting that, do you guys is it just, taking pictures of everything, having everybody write notebook entries? How does that stuff work?
Yeah, so we use a Google form that is required at the end of every meeting. So everyone who's at the meeting has to fill out that Google form. Otherwise, if they don't fill it out, they don't get to start on their projects next time until they fill that out. So that's how we enforce that everyone contributes to the notebook. And then obviously, we're all kind of, Elizabeth and I being the 2 kind of engineering notebook people, we walk around and we take photos of what people are doing, and that kind of feeds collectively those photos that we take and the that daily log form that takes in like what everyone got done and any problems and solutions that they encountered and what they hope to accomplish in the future. Those things all together kind of form our daily log section, which is then used to make our other sections of our notebook.
Cool. And we'll talk a little bit more about the documentation as we get later into this design process journey that I want to take us on. So you talked about how you do all the brainstorming and you split it up into subsystems. Then I really want to talk about fabrication. But before we do that, we're going to be having trivia for $20. You're going to be playing against a boss in fun trivia at the end of the show. So if you want to play for a chance to win $20, join our Discord through the link in the chat. And then you can join the call-in channel queue, and we will pick some members to come play trivia against a boss. So with that being said, I wanted to get more into your prototyping and fabrication process. I think that's the key to a lot of teams' success, is how well they can put together prototypes. What do you make your prototypes out of? Is it mainly kit parts, or do you like to do a lot of custom parts? How does that process work for you guys?
We love Go Builda, so after we've kind of drawn on the whiteboards, like Braden said, and kind of prototype ideas, we kind of use just what is around in our headquarters, put it together, make iterations. A big part of our process is trying and failing, and our motto is succeed faster. Fail fast, succeed faster. Sorry, not just that. And so we last year we went through 3 iterations between each competition to try to get the perfect mechanism for what we're making.
Brandon, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I just would like to highlight that last year, Elizabeth touched on this, but every competition that we went to, we brought a slightly different robot to. So between every competition, we kind of rebuilt parts of our robot. We didn't necessarily do a full rebuild, but we kind of had mechanisms in mind, like an early mechanism And then by the end of the year, we had developed our blue scissor lift that ended up, that's what we took to the state competition. So that just kind of shows how our team kind of does things in modules. So we're thinking about, okay, what are our short-term goals, and then what are our longer-term goals, and how can we change those short-term goals in order to accomplish what we want to accomplish in the long term. So.
Fantastic. And speaking of long term, let's talk about some final fabrication. So looking at your Rover Ruckus and Skystone robots, it seems like you guys have a lot of 3D printed parts and custom parts. And so what do you guys use for your machinery to make your final robot? Do you stick to a lot of, go build a kit parts, or do you do some 3D printing and custom through, aluminum, polycarbonate, what have you?
Yeah, so since we're now a neighborhood team and we're not funded by our school district, we don't have access to a lot of advanced tools like CNC machines or other tools like laser cutters. So we basically follow the motto of, if a part already exists, why reinvent the wheel? So if there's something that we can build using Go Builder parts or other parts that we have or that we can easily order, then we do that. But if we have a very specialized part that can't be easily made with existing parts, then we'll turn to 3D printing. And then specifically during Rover Ruckus, our intake for the minerals, we actually designed that, and then we sent it to a company to have them fabricate it for us out of Lexan.
Oh, wow.
So that was really cool, because since we don't have access to those advanced tools in our robotics space, we were able to reach out to a local company and have them fabricate that for us. And that obviously is what you see when we competed at Minute Maid Park.
Really cool.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, with us and 3101, since we're from the same school, like all of our stuff, we make ourselves. But I think it's equally as important learning, the whole business aspect of connecting with sponsors and establishing connections in the business community, to find industrial companies and things like that who will fabricate these parts. That's really impressive, guys.
Yeah, and so we talked a little bit about like how you between competitions iterate. Is there a process that you guys go through to evaluate what changes you want to make, or is it just like, this didn't work, time to fix it? Like, what does that process look like for you guys?
We try to record every match we do at competitions and even just at headquarters. And if something's going wrong multiple times, especially, we're like, we have to fix this. And even if it happens once, if you don't know what the problem is, it might happen again,
Sure. And, speaking of recording matches, what do you guys do for practicing? Like, I know some teams, they'll just, run matches. Others will, be really strict with the timers, penalties, everything. And, others will track every stat. Where do you guys fit in with that?
I think as we approach competition time, we get a lot more diligent about like recording, like actually going for the proper amount of time, like 30 seconds of auton and that kind of thing.
Sure.
But when we're in the early stages of our like robot development, we kind of just test it when it's ready to be tested, obviously. And then kind of once we hit a stage where we think the robot is competition ready, then we'll put it to the test in actual like scrutinized matches where we'll score it, we'll count penalties, those kind of things.
Okay. Well, so my next question is about your engineering notebook and engineering documentation. You guys recently released a very lengthy video about the engineering notebook and engineering documentation this year. And do you want to talk us through a little bit about your process for documenting exactly what your team does and, how you keep members accountable and make sure you're getting, the best information and things like that?
Yeah, sure. So I mentioned this a little bit, but we use a Google form that basically is required of everyone who's at the meeting, and that collects data basically about what each person accomplished, any problems that they had and how they solved them, and what they want to accomplish in the future. And essentially that feeds the rest of our engineering notebook. So we use Google Drive we have a shared folder with everyone. So all that data from that Google form is then put into different documents to like kind of organize all of our information. So we have like a lengthy daily log, and then from that, Elizabeth and I pull that information and put it into like summary sections. So we'll have like a section that summarizes our robot development. We'll have a section that summarizes our programming, our outreach efforts, our business plan, that kind of thing. And then our final version of our engineering notebook is put into Adobe InDesign, which allows us to implement our team theme and use templates. And it's a really easy tool to use and has a lot of features that allows for page formatting. So our steps are basically a Google form, then goes into Google Docs, where Elizabeth and I kind of shuffle through the information and organize it. And then the final version gets put into Adobe InDesign to create the final pages.
Oh, that's really impressive. I know for us, we just do everything directly in Adobe InDesign. And, we make the templates at the beginning of the year and then just, use those for the rest of the season. I definitely think it can get a little bit confusing every time figuring out, who has the most recent file or what's exactly where. So I think that's the Google, the first Google Docs idea, and then going into InDesign is a really good suggestion for teams out there.
Right, especially
and
since,
I assume you guys...
since Adobe InDesign isn't quite as easy to collaborate with. Sure. Google Docs, you can have people on the same document at the same time. And InDesign, it's a little harder to set that up. So that's kind of why we collaborate in Google Drive and then put the final version into InDesign.
Sure. Really cool. How long have your notebooks been, usually? And are you guys planning on doing a notebook this year or just the engineering document?
Yeah, so typically in the 4 years I've been in FTC, we typically have two binders, one that is technical and one that's non-technical. So all of our technical robot, CAD, programming, stuff like that goes into our technical binder. And then the second binder has all of our outreach efforts, info about our team, business plan, that kind of stuff. And we are planning to create an engineering notebook for this year, although we know it's not required. We think it's a good thing to practice because, as we understand it, if judges want to seek more information from your team, it's a nice resource to have available in addition to the engineering portfolio.
Yeah.
Cool. So we had a section about awards. I'm going to get to that later because I know that you guys do a lot of outreach on your team. And so just looking at it, on your website, you have three main things that were featured. One is medical outreach, one is Go Build a Guide, and one is face shields. So could you talk a little bit about each one? And I've got some specific questions, but just could you give us an overview of these three programs?
Yeah, Brayden, do you want to talk about the Go Build a Guide?
Yeah, sure. So essentially we saw, this actually started during Sky Zone. We saw that both Rev and Tetrix had basically a basic bot guide available for teams to use. That so rookie teams can basically build a basic drivetrain and then a basic mechanism that goes along with that for the game. And we decided, since we love Go Build Us so much and they're a sponsor of our team, we really wanted to put one out there that teams who want to use Go Build It parts could use. So Go Build Us sent us a Go Build a Master FTC kit, and then we worked on designing a simple drivetrain, and then we also put together an instruction manual, and that's available on our website. And then this year we decided to add to that. We created a game-specific guide that I believe is on screen now that basically is a mechanism that we created the first week after kickoff, which basically allows you to pick up the rings and place them into the low goal. So now with these two build guides for any rookie teams who are struggling with how to start, those are available on our website if you'd like to take a look through those and try building just a simple drivetrain and a simple mechanism.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's similar to what we did. I know in the past, not this year, but in the past couple of years, we've always done like a robot in 3 days where we're just trying to build using the Go Build a Kit only and make it so then any team could just build off of that. So really cool stuff there. So on your face shields, you guys took a very different approach than what I've seen for a lot of teams. You guys were making face shields, obviously, to help with COVID measures. And you, instead of like just 3D printing the frames, you made resin molded frames. Do you guys know about that and why you chose that? If you don't, that's perfectly fine.
I know that our coach initially was the one who found the idea to do those resin molded face shields, and that was simply because not all of our team members had access to 3D printers. So that was an easy way for all of our team members to get involved. Our coach kind of distributed the materials needed to make those, and then we all were all pitching in on making those resin molded shields. And then by the end of the summer, once COVID had spread a lot more, we actually did start making 3D printed face shields because they were a little faster to make. And then we also, by the time schools started up, we realized that a lot of schools would need face shields. So what we did is we set up a GoFundMe to raise money, and then we used that money to buy 3D printers to actually send to the schools themselves with some filament and some instructions so that they could make as many face shields as they needed. So the project started out kind of simply as these resin molded face shields to distribute to medical professionals, and it kind of took throughout the summer. We developed it more through 3D printing, and then eventually sending 3D printers to schools to use. So it ended up being a much wider spread process, and it became a lot more than what we had originally intended, and that was awesome. So, is
the design here supposed to be reflective of a horseshoe or anything like that? Because it kind of looks like one. So I was wondering if the theme.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
It really does. I don't think that was the intention, but I see what you mean. Us being the Cobalt Colts, that's kind of coincidental that it worked out that way. But yeah.
I think that's a common design that most teams have been printing out. I know that was printing in my basement for a very long time.
Or they're just big fans of the Cobalt Colts. Can we just agree on that?
True. That too. I could say that we are big fans of the Cobalt Colts. All right. So is there any other outreach initiatives that you guys thought were cool? How do you guys come up with outreach initiatives? I know brainstorming on those can be very difficult, especially since it feels like everybody has already done everything. So do you want to talk a little bit about that process if you know more about it?
One of the biggest outreach projects we've been doing is we partnered with United Healthcare, who's our sponsor, and we created a 501c3 to help youth get access to STEM. And it started out in Kansas, it spread to Nebraska, but not everyone has the resources and the money to start FTC or any kind of STEM project. So getting involved in that, really we relied on a sponsor getting us involved, pitching to them, creating that process. For a lot of our other ones, it's usually just what inspires us. We created a program with Ronald McDonald House, just because, some of us have had interactions with them and we just wanted to start interacting with different programs. So that's how we get involved in a lot of our outreach events.
Wow,
awesome.
That's really incredible. And do you guys have any other recurring outreach events that you do, every year?
Over the summer, some of us volunteer with first camps. And then we have a bunch of little summer camps that we do, helping small businesses teach kids over long weekends. So we do a lot of that stuff too.
Wow, that's really cool.
Awesome. So I want to now talk a little bit more about the judging side and how you guys approach awards. So how do you guys approach them? I mean, there's 7 awards. How do you juggle that? And how do you prep for them and set yourselves apart? Because in order to be an Inspire finalist, you have to set yourself apart. So could you talk a little bit about that?
If I could give any advice to a rookie team or any team, it would just be to have a presence at any competition. I think what helps us stand out is that we're really involved at our competitions. We have the sparkly blue hats with the lights, where we try to go around and helping everyone. Having a presence really sets you apart. You also have to have the documentation. Ours is, I think, ridiculously long. So laying that out for the judges to look at it logically and not read 400 pages. And then the robot part, we just try, so we're not a super competitive team, but we just have a lot of fun. And that's kind of what has helped us win.
Yeah, I would agree with those 3 aspects. Having an organized engineering notebook that judges can, see what's the most important information in a short amount of time. And that's something I really like about the engineering portfolio this year, is because it allows, or it basically requires that teams share the most important information in a concise way. And then also, like Elizabeth said, demonstrating gracious professionalism and having a presence at competitions goes a long way. So that's a piece of advice I think we would give to rookie teams, is to just try and get involved, volunteer at competitions, even if you're not participating or competing in that event. Just showing your support and your presence at competitions is a big deal. And then also just having a robot that works reliably well. And a kind of the approach that we take with our robot design is to try and be the best alliance partner that we can be. We don't necessarily want to be the best alliance captain, but we want to be the best robot that can work well with an alliance captain. So we always kind of think, which autonomous path can we take that will not be the most common path, or what can we do during teleop that can assist a robot that might be better than ours. So that's kind of our approach, and that's proven to work for us pretty well. So,
is that why you guys focused on Depot in Roboruckus?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in every year there is a dominant and a subdominant robot on the field, right? Like there was the fact in Roboruckus, one played Depot, one played Crater. Last year, one was a feeder, one was a stacker. So, yeah, picking that strategy of going to be a second or being a pick, and rather than always trying to be an alliance captain can definitely be really helpful. And there's a lot of young teams that end up doing really well because of that. So thank you for that. We had a question from the chat. Elon9421 asks, what music does your team listen to?
Elizabeth, would you like to answer that?
Well, I control the speakers in our headquarters, or when I usually play the Toad from YouTube. So just really obnoxious songs. Logically, they like to listen to pop songs, but I like listening to Toad screaming in our ears. But
yeah, whenever Elizabeth has control of the speakers, it's always unpredictable. But usually we do listen to music during our meetings. Not always, but most of the time we have background music going. And it's usually a little crazy if Elizabeth is the one controlling it.
I know last year we had a playlist for our team, and one of the songs that instantly got banned because of the number of times it was played was Life is a Highway. We heard that song at least 50 times within the span of 8 hours, and we were just so done with it. But I do agree with Bat Boy in the chat. Crab Rave, the B movie, the Duck Song, anime intros, all top notch for FTC teams.
Yes.
Tyler, you had a question at the end?
Yeah, so earlier you guys mentioned, of course, with you being at Minute Maid Park for finals, of course, last year first said that, that the large venue is going to be done, right? No more Minute Maid Park, no more Ford Field. So I'll ask you, both of you, as somebody who's been on a team that's been down at the finals, if in the future your finals would be just where the two FTC divisions were, right? Mm-hmm. Do you feel that would be a different impact at all to how it was, or the way I kind of look at it is, FTC at Minute Maid, it was cool to be in the bigger stadium, but FTC tends to be a little bit smaller. I feel from FRC perspective, sometimes gets overshadowed a little bit because of the size of it. Are you looking more forward to actually having a small venue, or did you like the large Minute Maid Park?
I would agree with you in saying that I think FRC gets a lot of the attention at Minute Maid, just because you look on the other side of the baseball field and you see the bigger field. And I think just FRC gets a lot more attention on Minute Maid. But I wasn't personally on the field for the matches. I went on the field after we won the second match. But I would say it was really cool to be there. It was such an amazing experience. But I do think that the smaller venue might be a little bit better, just so it can be a little more focused on FTC. Although it's awesome to be competing in front of thousands of people in a huge stadium, I think it's a lot of pressure. Definitely, it is probably a once-in-a-lifetime experience, but I think the smaller venue might actually be a little bit better.
And actually, you bring up something interesting because I guess they didn't fully... Did they fully release what they were doing for FTC in the finals? Like, is it going to be combined with FRC, or is it going to be fully separate?
It was supposed to be fully separate.
Fully separate.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. I do recall seeing that. Mm-hmm. Elizabeth, any thoughts from you on that? Would you prefer the larger venue, or do you like the idea of what First is moving towards?
I think I disagree with Braden. I thought I was on the field the whole time. It was one of the best moments in my life, and they played fireworks afterwards, and we were dancing on the screen. So I was disappointed when they changed that because of the feel. I think there was a lot of chaos, yes, and FRC gets overshadowed, but it was one of the most fun days of my life. So
yeah, I would agree that the fireworks being able to watch the fireworks from the field was probably one of the most memorable moments. So yeah, I agree that it's kind of sad to see that go, but there might be some positives that come out of that.
Yeah. Meanwhile, at Ford Field, you guys are all Houston people. Meanwhile, at Ford Field, we get stuck with the small football stadium. No fireworks. I got to go on the field in 2018, and yeah, it was fun. But I just wish they had gotten it over with. That way, I could go to bed.
Yeah,
So
on the
anyways-
other hand, you didn't have potential sunlight coming in and being shined upon on the field.
messing
that
up,
sort of thing.
messing
That
up the
is true.
CV. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we also that year, I think there was so much static. Like if you just like walked and touched the field, you were gonna have a huge shock. So I think out of the two matches that were played, both of them had dead robots for at least some portion of the match. At least in FTC and FRC
In
actually
Relic
that year
Recovery?
as well. In Relic Recovery, there was
2 out of
were-
the 3 matches were disconnected robots.
and same with FRC that year with Power Up.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so not a great time,
Yeah.
but that I think that's another reason why they're trying to shift away from it. That way they can have a more repeatable and reliable.
Yeah, it's
environment.
definitely not the money
Right.
or anything like that. I'm sure.
yeah. Well, I will put in.
Don't worry. I'm sure your championship discount will be in the mail later too.
All right, we're now gonna switch over to some trivia. We've got some FTC themed trivia. Tyler, do we have somebody on the call?
Yeah, we actually have Trishula is back. So is Ocean? Is that right?
Yep.
All right. So is back once again to play and looking for some revenge. I think right. So
Indeed.
yeah. So no doubt. So we're gonna play against a boss on there. So I'm just gonna go over how it's read, and then Ishan, are you cool reading off the questions?
Yep, I can do that.
Okay, cool. So real quick for trivia for everybody, just a reminder, we're going to have 5 questions on here. Once again, you can answer them as quickly as possible, or you can choose to pass, and we'll come back to them if I remember, or in this case, if Sean remembers, because I always forget that. So, but once again, it is timed, and our tiebreaker is time as well, too, so you need to go as quickly as possible. But of course, Ocean, you know how to do this already, and then once we're done, we'll go back through. So we're going to ask that boss make sure he mutes the stream so he can't hear anything on here, and we'll give him a big wave once we're ready to come back. All right. So, are you ready for your round number 2 of trivia?
I am.
All right, let's give it a shot. And on you, Sean.
All right, in 3, 2, 1. In which FTC game were hockey pucks used as the main scoring element?
Hotshot?
Who's the director of FTC?
Team Cayman?
In what game were VU marks or Vuforia targets first introduced?
Velocity Vortex.
Which game was the first game to have fields made by Andy Mark?
Quad Quandary?
According to the Orange Alliance, how many active FTC teams are there right now? Closest wins.
3,250.
And that is time.
All right, let's give a boss here a big wave and bring him back on. Do that. Ocean, how did you feel you did?
Hello.
I know I got at least 2 of those wrong.
Fair enough
All
on there.
right.
So that's not bad, based on how some of the other people do. So, all right. Your turn, boss. Sean, whenever you're ready.
All right.
All right, boss, I'm going to get started in 3, 2, 1. In which FTC game were hockey pucks used as the scoring element?
Oh gosh. Cascade Effect.
Who is the director of FTC?
Ken Johnson.
In what game were VU marks first introduced?
Ooh. Was it? I think Velocity Vortex.
Which game was the first game to have fields made by Andy Mark?
I don't know. Cascade Effect. Say that again.
According to the Orange Alliance, how many active FTC teams are there right now? Closest wins.
Like 4,000, 4,500. Like 4,250.
And that is time.
This one's going to be
All right.
close.
This one's going to be really close. let's go through this. So the first question was, in what game were hockey pucks used as the main scoring element? And the answer that Abbas gave was Cascade Effect. Ocean said Hot Shot. The correct answer was Face Off. I think that was the 2009 game right before Hot Shot. Who's the director of FTC? Abbas said Ken Johnson. Our guest said Dean Kamen. It is, in fact, Ken Johnson. He gives a speech at Championship every year, and he's the one who announced virtual events. In which game were VooMarks first introduced? And both of you guys said Velocity Vortex, and both of you guys would be correct. So right now, Abbas is up 2 points to 1 point. Which game was the first game to have fields made by AndyMark? And Abbas said Cascade Effect. Our guest said Quadrant Quandary. The correct answer was Block Party. Before then, they actually used like PVC tubing. That way, anybody could build a field just using Home Depot parts. And now our final question. According to the Orange Alliance, how many active FTC teams are there right now? Closest wins. Abbas said 4,250. Our guest said 3,250. The correct answer was 3,680, so our guest wins that point. That makes it a 2-2 tie. So we're going to go to time as our final tiebreaker. There was a total of 2.5 seconds in between these answers. And one person had 41.33 seconds. One person had 38.78 seconds. Actually, 3.5 seconds. And the winner with 38.78 seconds was Abbas.
So close.
So close.
So close. Thanks for playing though once again, man. Wow, what a close one, and that's going to bump up trade to $30 next time. Appreciate it, but hey, good job all the way around, guys.
Yeah, thanks for playing.
Awesome. And that's going to wrap up trivia for today. Make sure to tune in next time. That way you can have a chance to win $30. Boss, want to close us off with our social media?
Sure. So thank you, everybody, for all the follows and subscriptions we received today. Don't forget that you can subscribe for free if you or your parents have Amazon Prime. We hope you enjoyed this episode of FTC Recap. I know I did, interviewing Cobalt Colts. If you want to stay connected with what First Updates Now FTC is doing, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram with the handle @FunFTC, and join our Discord through the link in the chat.
On behalf of myself, Abbas, and our producer Tyler working behind the scenes, we'd love to thank you for tuning in. Bye.
Thanks for watching. If you want more fun content, be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos. Thanks to all of our co-executive producers on Patreon and Tier 2 Plus subscribers on Twitch, keeping fun loud, live, and independent.